to introduce us all,
Okay.
and then we'll go to yourself.
Okay. So I'll spend 10 minutes with the slides, like Hakan said, and then the rest is.
I just remind you that because we are broadcasting from the Zoom platform, it may be around 20 seconds delay at the Facebook group, where you, as you understand.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, actually, you just talk each other, but people will write. Maybe they will hear you 20 seconds later.
Okay.
Approximately. Yeah,
Okay.
we are live now.
Yeah.
Okay, Hakan, if you tell us when we're ready to start.
Yeah.
Okay, Hakan, if you tell us when we're ready to start.
Yeah. So that's what he meant by 10-second delay.
Yeah. Hello and welcome to Hernia Patient Support Group and our first ever Ask a Surgeon live session. This chat is being recorded, and we are aware that we have members from around the world and we are all on different time zones. It will be available later in our files. So I am Jackie and I'm a hernia patient like yourselves, and I am one of the admins for our group. I am delighted to introduce you to our special guest tonight, Mr. Srinivas Chintapatla, an abdominal wall surgeon from York Hospital. Chinta, welcome to our group. Lovely for you to meet you again, and kind of you to join us.
Very nice to be here, Jackie.
So I met Chinta last year at the European Hernia Society conference, where he joined Susanna and myself in the first ever patient session to discuss exactly what is important to patients on their hernia journey. Many of you will have seen some of the information that I share with the group from York Hospital, as we really do believe it is of the highest quality and it is so patient friendly. So I strongly believe that over the recent years, the way in which patients expect to receive their care has changed. We want more of a partnership with our surgeons and we want to work together. But if you are anything like me, you need to be able to understand why and to ask questions. So tonight we are going to be discussing prehabilitation and why it is important and why doctors will ask us to lose weight and to stop smoking. So Chinta, can you please explain to us what prehabilitation is and why it is important?
Yes, delighted, Jackie. I'm really happy to be here talking about what's dear to me and hopefully dear to you all. I was planning to share some slides first, if I may.
Yes, please.
10 minutes of slides and then open for discussions. And at the start, I will answer your question of what prehabilitation means to me as I talk about it. Let me just go back to sharing the screen. And here I am. Can you see that, Jackie?
I can't see a screen now.
Okay. So I'm having problems in sharing the screens. Oh, I see. It says you cannot start screen share while the other participant is sharing.
Right.
Now,
Right, there we go. No,
okay.
I'm not.
Yeah, got it. I don't know what
Yes,
that
it's
was.
coming up now. It's coming up now, Chinta. There we go.
Okay. Can you see the?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. All right. So I've started with prehabilitation, getting fitter for abdominal wall surgery, reconstruction surgery, and I guess that is what it means. It used to be a word that we all understood when we said rehabilitation. You thought about a patient after a motorcycle accident or a major septic surgery, and then going through physiotherapy, going through various things to make them and recover from the operation. And prehabilitation was the idea that you put in all that effort before a major operation so that the patient starts off in a much stronger, much fitter situation. So that is in short. Perhaps we can talk for about 10 minutes, if you'd allow me, and then we discuss how things are for each individuals in your group, and maybe answer some questions and try and find a way through. So I'm Srinivas Chintapala, and I'm from York. Very proud, beautiful buildings. Really, the Minster is lovely, and hence very proud of that, and I put that up. I work predominantly as an abdominal hernia surgeon now, having started in 2004, and about 40% of my job is also as a director of the cancer and support services, various departments. It's the diagnostics that I look after. So the York Abdominal Wall Unit is predominantly run by 2 GI surgeons and 2 plastic surgeons. Just before I launch into it, there are some patient photographs, and while they have all given consent, perhaps it would be best if we all don't take further copies of these photographs. Thank you. So there are the guys, the 4 musketeers, but the real work is done behind the scenes. Andrea Cousins, who's my secretary, does a huge amount of organizing me and the unit, and Olivia Smith is the research fellow. But along with that is a lot of support structures, radiologists, dietitians, specialist nurses, physiotherapists, all of who feel enthusiastic about abdominal wall hernia patients and how to look after them and come up with little ideas, little modifications, which just makes things, we hope, better for the patients. So why prehabilitation? I put up 4 slides over here. So the purplish screen, the lady over there with the big hernia on the left of my screen, you will had diabetes. The gentleman below that was a smoker. You can make out the obvious obesity, and the person with the large pendulous laparostomy hernia abdomen had intracutaneous fistulas, which basically means a connection into the bowel in the groins, and so causes other problems. There are some things like smoking, diabetes, obesity, which we as patients, and I include myself as a patient into this, we as patients can change, can work on. If you have a fistula or a stoma, that's almost a surgical correction needed, but the rest is something that's within our give to work on. And that is where we'll concentrate today, because you can see you can achieve good form, good function if you work on things beforehand and reduce infection rates. As well, whether it is smoking or diabetes or malnutrition or obesity, all of these have a higher what are called SSIs or infection rates when you operate. Now, I put this slide up primarily because I absolutely love Greek and Greek stories, and as a child I used to love it. And this is the Delphian temple where I spent many a happy hour walking around. But within the walls, which don't exist, those ancients wrote about 3 great sayings. Some say a lot more. One which said, know yourself, of course, in Greek, but that, I think, is the central point of how we can prepare for an event which is going to take a lot of your effort. And I think knowing who you are, what your risks are, how you can modify your risk, I think that is crucial to this. With that kind of an idea, what we did at York is to create a health questionnaire, because when you go and meet your surgeon, he or she is going to ask you what operation you did, what operation you had before, what complications you had, how many times you had, which surgeon, which hospital, are you a smoker, have you tried to give up smoking, how much is your exercise tolerance. But rapid fire questions in a busy clinic, very hard to answer and remember. And this was an attempt to give you time and headspace, when you have headspace, to write down the answers to these questions. And that means that there is an accuracy in this, and you invest your time, you figure out what you want to say and try and gather details that you want to tell the surgeon. And we put in a section about quality of life. For 3 years, my research fellow, Olivia, did a lot of work asking patients, what matters to you in your quality of life? Tell us. And distill these over a long period of time, and came up with body image, mental health, symptoms, and how you adjust to the symptoms, employment issues, interpersonal relationships. And we give patients time to write about these, so that we can read, and it's in their own time, in their own space. And then we put in a section about shared decision making, or what is it that matters to you. All of this is put down in the York Hospital webpage that we run on abdominal wall reconstruction, and this questionnaire and all of this is present over there. So when we see the patients, we get a chance for going through that story, but spend more time in the discussions, the assessments. And we are a big fan of CEDAR, which is work from Todd Henniford at Carolinas, absolutely brilliant surgeon. Spent a lot of time trying to assess what parts, what components really raise the risk of having a wound problem, associated risks. And it helps you find a number, and then if you click at a button and change the smoking status, or change the obesity status, or change the diabetic status, you see the risks fall. And we use that in the clinic with the patient filling this, as do other assessments. And because of that, working further on that, we built this information leaflet. It was about 2 years of labor of love, because we approached this with physiotherapists and dietitians and diabetologists and surgeons and patients involved in this. This is the leaflet that Jackie helped me, because after 2 years, when we got it to a point, we then had Jackie and Susanna give their input on whether this struck the right chord, whether it gave the right messages, what was the tone. We had plain English experts help us before that, but it was really helpful to have the patient voice in this leaflet. So I'm quite confident that we've done as much as we can to find the right message. And my perception was that irrespective of whether it was smoking or alcohol or diabetes or obesity, what mattered over there was that it had a psychological overlay, and we needed to change behaviors, modify behaviors. And this is very hard, modifying behaviors. And so personally, I find it very hard for myself. So we went to the psychologist, you'll see the stepwise process, focusing on one habit, or picking a habit that you feel ready to change, that you feel you want to change at this pace or a different pace, building your awareness, or considering your strategies on how to change, so that you're in control completely and you go at the pace you want, so that it's a sustainable effort. It's not just for a summer, it's for life, the changes that you bring in. So I'm trying to outline in a few minutes strategies that we built. We wrote about smoking, collected the NHS free websites, found online support where the local smoking cessation clinics were provided tips on how to stop smoking because it increases wound breakdown, or diabetes because it affects your exercise capability, or your exercise might affect the insulin requirements, or you might find it harder to do this because of neuropathy. But how do we achieve that safe blood glucose levels? We wrote a booklet with the diabetologists about managing diabetes and physical activity. And then we set up this prehabilitation program. It's a pilot program running for the last 9 weeks. It's a really huge collaborative effort. York St. John University has absolutely fantastic space for exercise. That's where the York City Football Club exercises. And they were very kind. And in our collaboration, they allowed our NHS patients to come there with abdominal wall hernias. And we've set up this place where it's a 6-week program. There's a dietitian, there's an anesthetist who's interested in exercise physiology, there's a physiotherapist, and together they assess the patient. And then the patient comes back for 6 weeks every Monday for a period of an hour. And there is a gradual exercise prescription, diet prescription, and support in order to make things forward. Amy Newton has worked with me for 10 years and uses bioimpedance, measures the fat content so that when you're trying to lose weight, you're losing fat as predominantly and not muscle, because that would make you weaker. And so she uses these grip meters, etc., to build muscle. We brought together all the online resources, collected a couple of books which might be helpful for people who don't like online access and who would prefer a book to read, and got together psychology tips. And if there was one tip, it's about consistency. It's not which diet, but being able to do the same thing for a long period of time. And it's not just dieting or exercise, but it's a triad. It's a behavioral changes with dieting and exercise that would probably help. We have an exercise schedule that happens, and they come together, the patients come together, so that camaraderie helps support each other, because they are all people feel that others have gone through, practical tips appear, and we write to the patient in plain English what we have agreed needs doing, some not imposed, but agreed by the patient, that this is what I will do at home. This is what I think I'm capable of doing. I'm able to do, I will be able to stop a pint of alcohol, or whatever it is that the patient feels in control. We put in a section on mental well-being because it's really an important aspect. The journey is hard. There will be times when you feel exhausted, just tired, and there are some tips of how to manage this kind of low if you are feeling that. And the other thing we've done is that these leaflets are known by everyone who's treating the patient in every stage of the journey, whether it's the pre-assessment or whether it is the pre-optimization, so that the same message, consistent message in plain English goes out, and that helps a certain clarity of thought and purpose. I put up our web page, and those are the different leaflets that we have on that web page, and you're welcome to use them. I put my details in, and we'll go on to discuss it further.
Thank you, Chinta.
Jackie, shall I stop the slides? And
no, it's fine if you want to leave them there, because we have see if I can open the one about the fitness. We have shared these on Facebook on our group because I think they are really useful to our patients. All your information is very useful.
Thank you.
We have been given some questions. Are you all right?
Yeah, of course.
All right. So one of the first questions we were asked was about a BMI. What is a safe BMI for somebody to have a surgery?
So this is a really important and a very difficult question, because what is known is that, and it came from Todd Henniford's extensive work, What is known is that a high BMI definitely causes is associated with far more wound breakdowns. What's known is that the lower the BMI is, there seems to be lesser associated wound breakdowns. Now, normal BMIs are seen as 25, overweight 30, obesity. And so I aim to work at a BMI of 30, but it is not a hard and categorical number, because if somebody starts at a BMI of 55, a BMI of 30 may not be feasible to achieve. And it is the whole patient, it is understanding what is needed, but it's a journey that the patient needs to be in control of as well. So, you know, I can't sit and say, right, you have to hit BMI 30. I would advise I'm trying for 30, but this journey, it may not be possible. It may be that I have to settle at 32 or 33 or 35, depending upon where you start, I think.
Yeah, I think it's important that we set yourself achievable targets.
Yes.
Don't set targets that a patient can't achieve. Once you've got into a small step, and it is a change of life when you're trying to lose weight, it's a change of lifestyle. But once you get into it and you've hit one target, then you can move on and hit another.
Yes. I mean, I'm a big believer of small goals, you know, bite-sized goals. And the journey feels possibly can't be managed if you think of, I need to lose 20 kilograms. But if you think of, I will start with a pound or half a kilogram, it's
I agree
much more doable.
Yes,
and
I think some people are frightened, but especially, and I'm talking from experience here, that if you have a lot of weight to lose, it can be daunting to think, oh, I have to lose X amount of weight before I can get surgery. But if you look at it and break it down, like you say, into like half a stone at a time, and then move on to the next one, you're achieving something. And it does take time, but set yourself realistic goals.
Yes. Now, I know we've talked about BMI, and it's not, I think, the best way of measurement or the only way of measurement. There's a number of things. The goal over here is to get the patient fitter for surgery. So there is a bit about losing weight, but there's also a bit about getting fitter, doing more exercise. Not that exercise doesn't contribute to the weight loss, but it contributes a lot to becoming fitter.
Okay, and what about at the other end of the scale, if a person is underweight?
Yes, so malnutrition, so underweight may be a presentation of actually the body being malnourished, and malnutrition is also associated with worsening in terms of incidence of wound breakdown. So in the booklet, I've tried to cover that malnutrition issue as well, because it's not only overweight, though overweight is also a form of malnutrition. Underweight is also a form of malnutrition, and both need to be kept in mind. Both are important.
Can I just clarify, when you talk about wound breakdown, we're talking about maybe wound infections and not healing properly?
That's right. Yes.
Just to clarify.
So yes, so wound breakdown is not is a grade. There are grades of it. It could be just a superficial one, or there could be a more longer and more deeper wound breakdown. But predominantly what happens is the subcutaneous and the skin breakdown. But of course, it causes a big problem for the patient, because that means regular dressings and regular long periods of time where the wound is being encouraged to heal, and other complications that can happen, such as if a mesh is exposed, mesh gets infected, this kind of things, which are really the more important and serious problems.
So we've heard, Shinta, that what the program you run at York, and unfortunately not everybody has access to something like that. Is there anything what we can do for ourselves at home?
Yes. So I think the leaflet was one of the aims had been that my starting point had been I say so much stuff in the clinic, but we all know that when we walk out of the clinic, we forget a lot of the stuff. So the leaflet was a way of putting things in one place. I think there are lots of, so if you break it down into smoking or diabetes or need to diet or need to exercise, there are free web pages which are available and run to a very high quality by the NHS. So those are the sites that I have identified and put together. That was the whole idea, that patients can do things for themselves, but it's not that they just go to the online search, but it is through dedicated sites which are which have a quality control on them. They're not the only sites. So for example, British Heart Foundation does a really good leaflet on eating well, which we use in our prehab clinic. Our dietitian uses that leaflet as well. And it has lots of tips and tricks, like what is 14 units of alcohol, or how much sugar you're allowed to eat, how can you reduce, is it 20 cubes you're allowed to eat, but actually not, it's only 6 or 7. And just being conscious and this mindful eating. One of my friends who's a diabetologist sat opposite me for a coffee, and he had a small cortado and I was having this large chai latte, and he said, that's difference. I want pleasure, you're also having pleasure, but your pleasure comes with a lot of milk in it, a lot of sugar in it, a lot of coffee in it, whereas I get the same pleasure with lesser sugar, lesser milk. And that's mindfulness. He's being aware, he's making choices. So I think it's that sort of changing behaviors.
Yeah. I did share to the group yesterday some of the apps from the NHS, and they do have seated exercises, don't they, for people who find
Yes.
mobility difficult.
Yes. Yes.
And there are also Zoom videos available that on YouTube where
Yes.
you can join in.
Yes, I think joining in helps make you feel you're not alone in this. There is a
It's
group
good for your
of
mental
people.
health, isn't it?
Yes, and encouragement. You can see that someone else is also doing and having the same difficulties you're having.
Yeah.
And then, some people tell me, oh, I find it very hard to go on a half-an-hour walk. And when I ask, do you have a dog? They say, yes. Do you go for walks with the dog? Yes. Oh, that's great. You start over there. Then you go for a 10-minute walk with the dog, maybe change that to 15 minutes. Would you enjoy that? And most people do. And then that 10 to 15 minutes doesn't seem as big as go for a walk for 1 hour a day. It's the bite-sized goal, doing something you love, doing something maybe you don't love, but you're willing to try for a long period of time.
Yeah, I think the hardest part is the first step you take to doing the exercise. Once you've started, it does.
Yes.
You seem to get into a routine, and it gets a bit easier. It's
that there's that lovely saying, isn't it? Journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step.
Yes.
I really like that. It's that first step which is difficult. It's hard, and you can't underplay how hard it could be, because for some people that might be a big barrier. I had a lady who had never moved out of her house because she had a huge hernia, and she found it embarrassing, and so she had become a recluse. So that first step to go and walk in the road opposite was a huge one.
That's right. Yeah. But what about the large hernias? Because they are very restrictive at times, hernias, and they do affect you psychologically. So
I missed what you were saying, Jackie. I heard you say, what about the large hernias, I think you said. So I can't hear you, but I'll pick that question while we wait for the technology to come back. For patients who have large hernias, one of the things that they can do is to have supportive garments or binders. I find we use some binders, abdominal wall binders, which are well designed, which are available commercially, but are also available. We got them in the NHS, and that one works quite well. I've lost Jackie, so I put these slides on to talk about the kind of leaflets that we have. If you Google York abdominal wall reconstruction, you'll find all these leaflets, and including one on geography, but one's on diabetes and physical activity, or one's on I'm running this cursor on the operation itself of mesh repair or component separation, which is a kind of Jackie, you're back.
Sorry, I lost.
I just, because you were off, I was trying to talk about what kind of information leaflets are there. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that. I must have lost internet for a minute then. Okay, so what about the hernias? We've had people who said they're frightened to exercise in case they make the hernia worse.
So this is a common comment that people have. And I think what happens is they're worried about making the hernia worse, but what they're really worried about is the pain that happens, of making the pain worse or making the discomfort worse. So when they're in clinic, we try out these abdominal wall binders, and some of them find it extremely comfortable to have an abdominal binder, and I can give the abdominal wall binder. But for those who don't have access to this, these are commercially available on the net. You can buy them. They're quite really good ones. There are different kinds of abdominal wall binders, and we use one which has a overlap, like a coat you could overlap yourself, and that provides the support, takes the discomfort away, and then gives you the confidence of walking further. Yeah, I was about, just realized I'd forgotten to mention, some people don't like abdominal wall binders. They really find them irritating and feel sweaty and so on. And for them, supportive garments are very helpful. Something like an underpants that comes all the way to the chest, but made out of thick elastic material. We send to a company which is in Sheffield, makes them, and then for their size, and you can get that available on NHS prescription. The company helps you explain how you get that, and I think that works as well.
Yeah, I think in the UK you are entitled to, is it 3 garments per year on prescription through your doctor?
Yeah.
I'm not a great fan of binders. I have a support vest, and I also recommend sometimes the shapewear. You know that.
Yeah.
That we hold it in sometimes.
Yes, and I find you can't be prescriptive about what works. 2 patients next to each other, one will like this one and one will like something else. It is about what you can wear and sustainably for a long period of time. Individuals have different choices and different things that are comfortable.
So when patients are on this journey, it's not an easy fix, and sometimes it can take time. How long is safe to delay an incisional wall hernia surgery?
It's a very individualized issue. It depends upon the size of the hernia, the size of the defect, the mismatch between what kind of symptoms the patient is getting. So I think it's very hard to say a definitive number because it is individualized. If the patient's not too uncomfortable and the abdominal binder or the supportive garment is working, and the size of the abdominal wall defect is quite large, and so there isn't that risk of imminent strangulation, then I think you have to weigh up the risks of doing the operation now versus the benefits of waiting. So it's always a risk versus benefit thing. I'm generally comfortable about waiting, but there are certain situations where the hernia neck is small, or the patient's got enormous symptoms which are suggesting that there's an obstruction element that you have to be cautious. I hope that answers. It's a difficult topic, and hence I've tried to portray it as truthfully as I can.
Okay, so what about smoking, Chinta? Because it's not all about losing weight, is it? So
yes,
if a patient says to you they can't completely stop smoking, is there a safe level of cigarettes they can have per day?
So the answer is, I think, no, because it is about, people have shown that smokers versus non-smokers, there's a very big difference. There isn't evidence to say two cigarettes a day is okay, but 20 cigarettes a day is worse. We don't have that evidence. So the evidence we have is about smoking versus non-smoking. And if people say, no, I'm not willing to smoke, it's not that they have decided I don't care about the evidence. It's just the evidence hasn't been explained through, hasn't been talked through. Perhaps that behavioral modification hasn't been entered. It's not about stopping smoking because it's your operation's better. It's about, it's better for you, and this is what it does, and this may be a way to do it, and that journey has to happen. Very rarely, I think, once a patient understands and that is supported and feels supported, they are physically addicted to a point that they cannot give. I can understand some people are physically addicted to a point that they just cannot, but that is very rare.
Okay, and what about vaping?
Sorry?
What about vaping?
Vaping. Sorry, I didn't hear you. Yeah. So I don't know enough evidence out there to show that vaping is safe to do in terms of wound infections and wound breakdown. So we at York, we try to encourage them to go off vaping as well, but accept that some people can't. I know it comes across as if I'm dodging the question, but I really am not. I try very, very hard to walk with the patient on that journey.
It's fair enough. And what about alcohol? So if somebody likes a glass of wine after work at night,
yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Do they have to stop the glass?
No, so I am not that strong about alcohol. Excess alcohol, yes. And I also talk a lot about how the alcohol also has calories. So the British Hernia leaflet on the eating healthily talks about number of units and puts that 14 units or 12 units in terms of pints. So 6 pints a week is 14 units, that kind of equivalent, so that it becomes quite practical. And I think it's the calorie count, it's the idea about, but a glass of wine, if you tell me a glass of wine is the issue, that can be, that's fine. You do need help in this journey. You can't just destroy everything you enjoy.
Right. Okay. What about the alcohol? Does it affect any prescription medication?
Yes, so there are some prescription medications which will be affected, and that's an individualized discussion. But it's not every medication. There are some, and so you'll have to go through that list with your GP or with your surgeon, or whoever. There'll be pre-assessment nurses. All of that will come into play.
Okay. So what about keeping a hernia diary? Do you recommend that?
Yeah.
diary of maybe.
So what I do is ask them to talk about their quality of life in that questionnaire. There's big sections about how it's affecting them. I haven't personally come across people using the hernia diary, but it's just maybe that I haven't come across it, or they are using it, but they don't bring it in the discussion. I don't have enough experience about that.
I keep a diary myself of what I've eaten during the day, what exercise I've done, and then maybe what my pain levels have been. And I do find it quite useful, actually.
Yes. So I didn't realize that's what you meant by a hernia diary. So we have exercise prescriptions, and part of that, part of the prehab program, they have sheets on, they write down what exercises they're doing, and there's a column for symptoms in terms of how it is. So we probably call it something different.
Sorry, you must talk different in York.
No, it's the same idea, isn't it? It doesn't matter what it's called.
Yeah. Okay. What about prescription drugs? We've been asked about that before for losing weight. Do you think?
So prescription drugs, I don't prescribe them, so that's quite a specialist area. So if people need to go through tier 3 management services, so people are referred to tier 3 management. So I appreciate a lot of your viewers maybe from outside UK, but I'll refer to the UK practice of there being tier 1, 2, 3, and 4 in terms of obesity management, and it's the tier 3 which is an service that is offered within hospitals, but that's a service which is a very carefully stitched up kind of area, which has dietitian support and a medic attached to it, and physiotherapists and counselors. That medic in our hospital is run through a diabetologist. They do the idea of prescription medicines, whether it is to reduce fat absorption, such as orlistat or liraglutide, which acts in a different way, but it's all controlled through a doctor checking that they are right for the medications and monitoring what is the effect. So I don't do the prescriptions. I do involve people in weight management groups and refer to others who would help in making those decisions.
Okay, so we've been asked if what if my hernia becomes too big to operate whilst I'm losing weight? Does that ever happen?
So that's difficult. I guess too big to operate, they would be, you want a good result, isn't it? You want that operation to be done by a specialist. There's so many different ways of managing hernias. I don't want to sit and say, oh, all hernias can be operated, because that is never true. You know, you'd never say absolutes are never true, but predominantly there are so many techniques. So the person who has so many different techniques of operating and answers to individual situations will probably be the best bet. Have a discussion with your specialist abdominal wall hernia surgeon. I think it is a complex field. It is a field with, like any field, the more you do, the better the surgeon becomes, the better the service becomes. And in general, you will have an answer in a specialist unit.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got a comment from Paula that the abdominal wall binder was fantastic at alleviating pain. They do help with pain, don't they?
Yes. Some people, like you said, some people really like it. And in my clinic, when I give them the binder, they say, this is fantastic. I've never felt so good. And some people say, I hate it. I don't want this. So it's individuals. And I think that's the...
I wear a vest when I'm having a bad day. It's one of the hernia vests. I find the binders, because I'm only short, I find them uncomfortable.
Yes.
But
yes.
the vest, I think, is a bit, it's not as strong, but I do still get some support.
So, so that's maybe about the styles of binders. So the binder I'm thinking about is something called tailor-made, and it comes in extra small, small, medium, large, and extra large. So there are 4 different, but it also comes in 2 different styles. One which is from kind of high to low, but one which is like a band. So I think there may be. Well, a patient of mine told me that he had bought 15 different binders till he settled on one. So I am not an expert.
No, it is trial and error. My GP
Yeah.
sent me to the orthotics to have one made.
Yes.
And it was like something out of a circus trying to get
Yes.
that on.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
It's just something
Yeah.
I can't wear at all.
Yes, yes. So I moved away from orthotics. I used to send patients to orthotics, but I don't think it was sustainable. They didn't like, the patients didn't like the one that was custom made. So I found they were happier with these off-the-shelf products,
Yes.
which seemed to be more easier to use.
Yeah, I don't think they really understood what it was that I needed. And it was something like out of a circus trying to get that thing on.
Yeah.
Okay, so with diets, Chinta, is there a specific diet that you recommend? I mean, we've seen a lot at the moment where patients are being advised to go on a fasting diet. Okay.
All right, so let's cover a little bit. I don't want to pretend I know a lot about diet like a dietitian does, but in talking to them a lot in our MDTs and so on, this is what the approach is. First of all, you want to create some calorie deficit, isn't it? You want to somehow create a situation where you're eating a little bit less than what your body needs, and hence the body is finding calories from whatever exists within the resources. Those resources are fat deposits, because that's what the role of fat is. Sometimes it's preparing you for that lean day back 2 million years ago. When there's a lean day, the fat is storing itself for that. So you create this body calorie deficit. So to do that, you need to know what the calorie is. There are equations for deciding what is the calorie for an individual. You put in your weight, you put in your height, your age, and whether you're sedentary and this thing, and an equation called Mills-Fielder equation brings out a calorie amount. And then you create a deficit. I'm going to take 500 calories lesser. Whatever it is, it has to be sustainable. No point in going slam bang. I'm going to really give this a go from day one. Make it, like one of my colleagues says, make it mindful eating, make it just a 10% loss, make it just the right choice. Instead of having 2 lumps of sugar, have 1. All of these things, if you do the mindful eating, will take off 10% of the calorie requirement that your intake, and that creates deficit. And sustain just that 10% deficit of calories will work over a long period of time. If you need far more, like I need you to lose 10 kilograms of weight, then you're going into a different mode. So there is one which is just by doing mindful eating. There is the second, when you're going right, I'm going to go into 500 calorie deficit, not 10% calorie deficit. Because, in your eye, 2,400 calories, adult male, or 2,100 calories, 10% of that is only about 200 calories. It's not that much to lose, compared to I need you to lose 500 calories a day. That's different. Consistency is the key. It's not which one. Some people do it through fasting. Some people do it through having meat-free days. Some people do it through portion sizes. A lot of my patients say instead of having their food on a dinner plate, they'll use a smaller size plate, and that trick works for them. Some tell me the idea of drinking water before and starting with salads, which fills up the stomach, and cutting down, instead of having 2 portions of chicken thighs, only 1. Small things. It's individual what you can do for a long period of time.
I think it's important as well that we understand when you are losing weight, you're always going to have a bad day.
Yes.
And you're always, but tomorrow it's a case of picking yourself up, don't dwell on it, and start again the next day.
Yeah, I think that motivation, it is exhausting. That's why we put in the mental health thing. It wasn't about, it's about how to cope when you feel weight loss is not progressing. I'm giving up. Uh, you see, the weight loss progresses and then it stagnates for a period of time. And that stagnation is probably because in some people the weight has reduced, but the muscle mass is beginning better. They are doing exercise, they are getting stronger, the muscle is building, and that build up is stagnating your weight loss. Or it may be that they have lost, the body is adapting, it's not making that progress that it needs. That it can be quite disheartening, and that's why teams together. And I find when for the prehab program, especially when patients come with a family member and the family member agrees to do it
Yeah.
with the person, that provides that there is no temptation in the house, the chocolates are gone, or stuff like that. Not that you're struggling doing the dieting and your partner or your daughter or son is happily eating. Sometimes that partner or that family member also getting involved is a great support.
So once they've had the surgery, we've lost all the weight and we've had surgery and we've been good. What happens if we then put weight on? Is that then going to be a high risk of the hernia coming back?
I think so. I think the point about losing weight and getting the mesh placed in the right area, and this is, you got the person to become fitter and the wound healing is taking place and the hernia mesh is integrating into the abdominal wall and the hernia is not recurring. I have seen cases of hernia coming back with the patient massively increasing their weight. So I have seen that. And I think that's why the name of the game will be sustainable changes in lifestyle, in behaviors. It's not. So I have this lovely lady who writes to me every Christmas saying, I'm still doing 20,000 steps and you've still not had a dance with me. So I get that letter every single Christmas. It's lovely, but that's sustainable change. That's what she's demonstrating. She's changed her life into 20,000 steps a day.
Yeah, it has to be a lifestyle change, hasn't it?
Yes,
And
yes.
I think the benefit is that if we're losing this and we're looking at the end goal, but then once we are hernia free, we can live a happy, healthy life.
Yes, yeah,
Much more active and fulfilled life.
It is about quality of life, isn't it? In the body image, in the mental health, in ability to not have discomfort or symptoms.
Yes.
In your ability to feel comfortable with yourself and your relationships. Going out with friends, I had a patient for who going out with friends became a problem, and that changed. That coming back into being able to sit in a pub without worrying about his hernia made a big difference to him.
Yeah, I find it easier for myself to work with a personal trainer, and
Right.
we focus on what I can do, but not on what I can't do, because I can't do everything that people who haven't had the surgery can do, who haven't got a hernia. But we focus on what I can actually manage, and we just work through that. And I think it's about finding what works for you.
Yes. Yeah. It has to be personalized care.
Yeah. And like you said, going out with the dog, it's surprising how many people actually stop you as you're walking whilst you're out. And again, that's good for your mental health, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think we've got about 5 more minutes, haven't we, before we finish?
Looks like it. Yeah.
Okay. So when we're talking about alcohol, I always think it's difficult to put glasses into units.
Yes.
And I think that's what, if you go into the pub and you're having a pint or you're having a glass of wine, how many units what we can have. So what do you think is a safe level there per week.
So it's the issue about what is safe levels in terms of what's recommended levels, isn't it, as safe levels? So 14 units is what British Heart Association talks about. And the leaflet I talked about, which our dietitian uses in their management, it has a lot about alcohol over there, and they say about 6 pints is of 4% beer is equal to about 14 units, or like 6 glasses of wine, which are 175 ml, rather than the 125 ml, that 175 ml one, not these glasses which take the whole bottle of wine in them.
That's it, isn't it? Because the glass sizes are so different.
Yeah, so I'm saying 175 mils of this thing. So yeah, maybe a pint of beer is like 3 units, or this large glass is 3 units. If you want to look at it in daily, I've gone out for a meal with this, say how much can I have? A glass of wine is about 3 units if it's 175 mils. But spirits are much lesser. A spirit shot is about a unit. So the other thing is, can you swap that glass of wine, that 175 ml, to a 125 ml glass and still get the same pleasure out of it?
Yeah.
And cut down the calories? That's, I think, is this concept of mindful people who say, right, I'm going to, instead of having a pint, I'm going to have half a pint.
Somebody once said to me that a glass of wine is just liquid cream cakes.
Yes, okay.
With the sugar content, you might as well just
Yeah. I get on a really hot day, I love a cold beer, but I also love cold sparkling water.
Yes, yeah.
So you want pleasure. It's individualized, and maybe there are compromises to be made, but one that doesn't look like a compromise, something you're getting your pleasure out of, but you're reducing your calorie intake and becoming healthier.
That's it. Okay. So I think we've answered every question. And we are running out of time now before...
Okay, yeah, it's been a pleasure.
We've just got a minute. We've got about 5 more minutes left.
Yes.
Before. So what about the NHS apps? There are some of those, aren't there, that will discreetly track your activity from not knowing, from behind, sort of. And here we have local activity groups. We have one locally called Stepping Out or Up and Active. Where they are people like us who want to make lifestyle changes.
Yeah.
And I think can you go to your GP to get referred to these, or are they through?
So different areas in the country have different support systems. Middlesbrough, I think, has a very good thing called PrEP-Well, where GPs can refer to, which provides people that support. So the answer is yes, but it is not equally available all throughout the country, because they have to be set up and agreed and discussed, and we are heading towards a financially very difficult market at the moment, I think, in the NHS, and the backlogs have made all the concentration maybe on the backlogs that are developing, including in hernia surgery.
Yes, I think that's something.
In that period of time when these backlogs are developing, utilizing that time to make yourself fitter seems to me of something that everyone should, rather than feeling, oh, my surgery is not happening, utilize that time to become fitter, take control of the situation, do the things that you can do, that are within your control. The things that are in your control, the bits like I showed in the first slide, the smoking, the obesity, the diabetes, the malnutrition, and then that makes you in a better frame of mind.
I think that's, I really do think that's excellent advice, Chinta, to use the time whilst we are waiting wisely to prepare ourselves, which is what prehabilitation is.
Yes. Exactly.
Okay, so thank you ever so much for tonight, Chinta. It's been lovely to speak to you, and I'm sure everybody who's been watching will have got
It's a
something
pleasure.
special from
It's a
this.
pleasure. Yes, it's a pleasure. I've enjoyed talking.
Yeah. Okay. So
Nice to see you again.
yes,
Jack.
nice to see you again. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.